Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful session of photography by TPS once again. And our speaker today is one more star on the firmament of TPS, one more extraordinary photographer, a photographer who is from Hyderabad but based in UK right now. Suraj Garg has chosen a very unique genre of photography, and, and he shoots architecture, fine art, or he does fine art of architecture. Either way, it should work fine. And his work is simply exceptional. His eye is something which is very unique. And when I see so many fantastic photographers in TPS, one of them definitely is Suraj, by far one of the best architecture photographers that I've seen. And I'm looking forward to the session. And before I do that, I'd like to say that Suraj has been, while based in the UK, he's also been uh, shooting for a lot of magazines, Guardian, and some of the other European magazines. And his work, as you've seen, he recently came to Hyderabad and did a walk with us. His work is stark, surreal, or perhaps ultra real. So I'll leave it to Suraj to explain his work. But before we start that, I'd like to ask Suraj, what made you pick this particular branch of photography?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Arvind ji, for the intro, and hello everyone. Thanks for joining in. Who was on the YouTube live stream? Just to let you know, I allowed to have view of the YouTube live stream because in a minute I'll be sharing my screen and walking you through the main topic of today's call. That's editing architecture photography. So I'll just come to that. So yeah, as Arvind ji said, I'm of course a member of the Telangana Photography Society for some years, and I'm also kind of indebted to this society to, I would say, to make me as a better photographer over the years, learning from stalwarts and from experts in various areas. I guess Arvindji asked me what made me to choose this specific genre of photography, that's architecture. I don't know. I guess it just came naturally to me. My interest in defined forms, shapes, structure, definitive lines, patterns, and stuff like that. So uh, over the years of the way got to travel different places with various architecture, and just to be very specific, it's to do mainly with modern architecture. That's my main area of interest. And yes, last month I was in India. I mean, as I'm from Hyderabad, that's where I was visiting. I did a architecture photography photo walk for some of the members of Telangana Photographic Society. This was in the high-tech city area. And what we did was captured some of the modern buildings there are quite a many. I mean, some really good ones. We'll have a look at some of them in a while. Yeah, so we did a photo walk, took so many pictures, the members took, and I, of course, took some pictures myself. So yeah, those photos formed the base, or like, sort of a raw canvas to work on. And editing is a very important thing. I mean, of course, in general in photography, but the way you approach editing for architecture has its own way. And what I'm going to talk about is, in a way, it's a mix of what people generally would do, experts would do, and some of my own views. You can have your own approach, build your own methodology. It's up to you. But yeah, I'm going to present my views. Today's session is going to be broadly in two parts, so to say. The first part is I'll be live editing pics of some of the members who have taken the pics as part of the photo walk. And I'll show a live editing of one of the pics that I took, and sort of do a like a workflow or a walkthrough of from what the picture looks like in raw to a fully processed fine art image. So yeah, that's how I'm going to do it. Right, so I'll just share my screen. There you go. And so just to add, I primarily use two editing tools. Most of you must be familiar with it. One is the Lightroom, another is the Photoshop. Okay. So yeah, I mean, there are a few images here that you see in my Lightroom library here, taken by the members. So let's start looking at them one by one. I was thinking I'll start with this pic. This was clicked by Mr. Firdaus Mistry. And people who are on the live stream, if you are from Hyderabad, you might perhaps recognize this as the Skyview building, and this one is, I believe, is called the PwC building. One thing in architecture that you, as I said, mentioned, and it shows in this pic is you got, definitive lines, you got patterns and some shapes. And of course, this is just a raw image, not processed at all. So a few things that I look to doing is, some basic edits to do with the tone. I thought this looks a little underexposed, so I'll just increase the exposure a bit, not too much. Don't want to blow out the highlights. I like my architecture pics to be quite contrasty, so that those lines and patterns they come out ultimately. And so I'm going to increase this contrast a bit, taking it to 20. There are not so much highlights, so I'll just bring it down slightly. Not that it makes much of a difference, but still. Shadows, it depends really. I mean, in some cases, I want the shadows to be brought out. In some cases, for example, in this picture, I want the shadows to be hidden a bit so that, the highlights come out even more better. So I'll try and pull down the shadows, not too much because otherwise the overall image might get a bit underexposed. Whites, I just play around a little bit with it, and the blacks. There you go. Yeah, that's fine. It's looking cool. Um, I also play around quite a bit with this. Yeah, the presence sliders. So texture, it works really well in my view when talk of architecture. When it's very close up and I want to define the texture, I increase that. If I do it here, it might not really make much of a difference. I do increase the clarity to make the image a bit more crisp. Again, as a next step, what I'll do is now, since this is a very tight crop, there is no sky or anything, there's nothing much to do in that area. So I don't do much. There's nothing really much to do in terms of the tone curve is here itself. I mean, even if I do, it won't make so much of a difference really. However, because I want to kind of enhance or saturate this color of the facade of Sky View building. So I'll just pick that color in the saturation section of the HSL side of Lightroom. So yeah, it's kind of orange. I saturate that a bit, and yeah. And if I want, you see this, there are some shades of blue and green. I might do something with the blue, bring the luminance down a bit to, it's not that much. Yeah, that's fine. Right. So this is what I did for this image. Here is the before, slightly underexposed, not much saturated. And so what else can we can do with this image really? I mean, this is the edits in terms of your tones, colors, brightness, highlights, lowlights, etc. Is cropping. Now, if you see if I look at it, there are different patterns forming here. And because these two buildings are juxtaposed, there is a contrast in the patterns itself. Here you got sort of horizontal lines, here you got kind of vertical lines. And if I go, say, do this and hit enter. So this tight crop, I believe, forms very interesting pattern over here. So you got this street light kind of, it might look like a, what do you say, an obstruction, but uh, the way I look at it is that it actually breaks the pattern, and it kind of adds a point of interest in the whole frame, and and coincidentally, it's also in, your rule of thirds at one third of the frame, right? Yep. So there are other things that can be done as well. Say if you want to bring it even more tighter, just get it this much. This also looks like an interesting frame. Preferably if this was flipped to the other side, the street light, I mean. Yep. Yep. So I'm not sure if we are allowed questions now, or we look at them later.
Questions we'll look at them later.
Okay, no
So,
problem. So yeah, I mean,
so
this
this
is how I have approached this pick. Um, and this is what Firdos had done. He had done a bit of a pseudo. How do I hide this? Here you go. Sorry. Apologies. Something's happening here. There you go. Yeah. So this was the edit which Mr. Firdaus Mistry had done. It's not loading still. Okay. Anyway, we'll come back to that later. Now let's look at another pick this time. Oh, there you go. There it is. Yeah. Okay. Now who's up next? Let's look at this one. Okay. This one was shot by another member of TPS, Ms. Shalini Jain. She is quite an experienced photographer. I mean, I know her main genre is wildlife, but she's done some good work in architecture. And again, this is the a plain raw image, there's lots to play with it. I mean, to start with, you see, it's quite underexposed. It's quite dull. The colors are quite muted. So there's a lot of scope to do things over here. To start with, I'll increase the exposure, of course, and then make it more contrasty. Highlights, not much, but I'll still bring it down, and shadows a little bit more. I'll increase the whites a bit again, bring down the blacks to make it a bit more blacks, that one. Now, if you see this, there were the sun was kind of almost opposite to where this was shot from. So you can see quite a bit of haze. So I'll use the dehaze light. It works really well in Lightroom. Yep, there you go. And specifically the haze is on the top right side of this frame. So I use the graduated filter here or rather, sorry, gradient filter, uh, just to mask that part of it. And I'll to increase the dehaze over there. You can see the details are coming out much better now. Okay. This is what we started with, and this is what the edits we have done. Now you can see the lines, these strips on this building is something we newly constructed. It's near, I mean, in high tech, it's somewhere near IKEA. And yeah, now one thing with architecture photography is because most of the time we are shooting from a level ground, and the buildings are much taller than the person themselves. You end up with converging lines which are not straight unless you're using a perspective correction lens, or is it also called as tilt and shift. But Lightroom has this. Sorry, did someone say anything, Saurabh, or is it just my voice echoing? Anyway,
I think it's
yeah. So if you look at this, there's a transform tool. It's quite powerful, and it works really well in architecture photography edits. I know that Photoshop has more powerful tools, but I mean, I do as much as possible in Lightroom. I sort of be doing something to do with just auto correction. It does most of the job. If you see, you can already see the lines corrected over there. Maybe just tilt it a bit to the left. I'll do this one here. Okay, that's fine. if I go back to the transform, if I look at level, there you know that one, vertical. There you go. Yeah, that's slightly better now. Right, this is what we started with, and this is what we ended up with. Oh yeah, I was just thinking of, yes, there you go. Increase the saturation a bit of these strips on the face of this building to make those colors really pop out. So on the face of it, this part of the building, because the sun was somewhere on this side, that is somewhere behind the building, the it's a bit of in the shadows. So that's the reason why I was trying to bring the colors out a bit. And again, if I want to do a bit of cropping to make it a bit more abstract, get some patterns out, this would be one way of looking at it. Say, there you go. Kind of get real tight close up if I do that crop. So yes, just getting it more closer. So you can see the contrast between the patterns in, the left half of the frame and the right half of the frame, so to say.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I was thinking this is 6 minutes. Shall I switch to short? Yep, that's fine.
So put it on hold and go out.
All right.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, Arvind ji, did you say something?
Yeah, I said put it on hold and go out. I'll rejoin you there.
Yeah,
I will
okay.
also rejoin you there. Yeah.
Sure. All right. Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Saurabh. Okay, super. How many people over there, Saurabh?
We got one more. This one is again by one of our members from TPS. It's Manikant. Um, Now again, this is a very interesting and a close, tight crop of the facade of the Skyview building. And as you can see, there are a lot of patterns, repetition of shapes, and um, honestly, there's nothing much to do with this, but let's have a go at it. So I again would increase the exposure a bit, make it with as much contrast as possible. I really want those patterns to come out. You can already see that happening. Bring the highlight slightly down, not so much. Shadows, I really want the shadows to get darker because I want the patterns to stand out. Probably make it a bit more 3D like. There you go. That's one thing. Increase the whites a little, not so much. The blacks, I think that should be fine. I'll increase the texture here to the difference is very subtle. It may not be visible on the live stream, but I can see it here already. So I increase the texture quite a bit. Clarity as well. There you go. Now, if I do a quick before after, The image looked, I mean, no, it's a raw image, straight off the camera, underexposed, a little dull, and we made it more contrasty. The lines and the shapes look more defined than the raw image itself. Uh, Saturation, let's see, it's quite saturated enough. Do you want to increase the saturation? No, that's fine. Let's decrease a little bit. That's all. That's fine. About minus 10, 12. That's okay. What else can we do with this image? I mean, it's a simple frame, uh, fairly, the pattern is kind of vertical, top down. Other way to do is perhaps you just rotate the picture, make it horizontal, or if you want to make it even more interesting, and this is what I tend to do most of the times with patterns, is make them at an angle to make the architecture look more dynamic, like that. Okay, if I undo this, this is what it was. And yeah, going back to that, just or do it the other way, the other side, whatever works. Also, if you notice, what I'm trying to do here is trying to get a line somewhere on the corner of the frame. I mean, I know the lines are not very straight or something, but yeah, sort of to make it, and then that helps in a way. There you go. This is what uh, is Manikant had done himself. It's a good view. I like his edit. Make the facade, those patterns look more gold-like. My take on this would be to kind of make it at an angle to make them look more dynamic, to bring about some sort of an action and energy into your frame. All right, right. We have the fourth pick, and looks like it's the final one from the members. This is again another under construction building. I mean, I don't know the name of this, but it's somewhere near the ITC Kohinoor Hotel near Durgam Chervu. What I really like about this building, and of course this frame, there's so much to play around with it, is it's got different patterns in two parts of it. And thankfully we had the sun coming from somewhere on the left side and it creates shadows. If I zoom in a bit, you see there are these strips or fins, and they're creating very nice shadows. And if you walk along the road, and this was another thing in architecture, where you make good use of the shadows, and if you walk around a bit, the shape of the patterns keep changing, and that's really interesting. So again, I would think I'll do a black and white, but before that, let me do the basic I'll underexpose this a bit. Of course, I'll increase the contrast. You can see, if you note, keep an eye on this area. I'll bring the contrast back to 0. Keep an eye on this area where there is so many shadows. If I increase the contrast, the shadows get more enhanced. You can see the contrast actually between the main part of the building and the shadows, and the patterns are just coming out very nicely. Decrease the highlights a bit more. Shadows, I want to decrease because I want the shadows to be darker. Increase the whites a little bit, blacks a bit more down. I'll definitely increase the texture here, clarity as well. There you go. See, the clarity also making a lot of difference here, making the architecture pop out quite well. And key haze a little bit, not so much. There you go. That's it. I want to make this into black and white. I'll just hit black and white, as simple as that. Here I will play around a bit with the tone curves. Slightly bring this down here. I bring the mid tones out a bit. Try to make it a bit more like a reversed S curve, if that makes sense. There you go. Slightly. What then we can do is actually zoom into it and play around with various crops. And that's how we can get some sort of abstract and architecture, very tight crop of the facade of this building. If I just zoom this, sorry, there you go. And if I decrease the size further, and if I look at it here, I do enter, right? This is very interesting. I like it, where half the frame has this kind of a pattern and half the frame has this kind of pattern. You can in fact create two images out of it. If I undo this, wait, let me go back to that shot. And let's zoom it into, wait, to create a different prop. There you go. Go there and just get only this one. There you go. This is one set of image that you can produce out of this. And you can get even this one. There's another set of image you can create out of this. If I redo this, if there was, say, a window pane open somewhere here, you could create that as a point of interest somewhere, right? You can also make this into a landscape frame to get this on the rule of thirds, for example, or get the other one into the rule of thirds, something like that. Yeah. So there's lots to play around. This is like a very good canvas. I mean, this photo to play around with. I mean, I know there are some because under construction you got some wires and all hanging around, and that can be easily done in Photoshop. But I don't want to get into that for this session. Right. Okay. Yep. So we had very interesting uh, images to work on, 4 of them, and I mean this was my take on what different things you can do. I mean, all these images were very close-up shots of the different parts or facades of different buildings, and this is what a lot of interesting things that you can do. Next,
Suraj, can I come in with a question here for you?
Yeah, sure. No, go on, please.
So here's my question.
Yeah.
When you're shooting this architecture, you're shooting it generally for yourself. What as to however you perceive it to be the best way to show it, and then you edit it accordingly, and then it gets picked by publication to be used. Am I right?
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
So
on.
what
Yes.
happens in case somebody puts up a building and says, "Look, Suraj, I like your work of shooting buildings. Would you please shoot this building for me and give it to me?" Would you also be cropping it at that point of time, or will you be doing the overall picture?
I mean, then this is a good question. In fact, there is one point I missed out. I'll come to that later once I answer your question. So the other thing is, what you talked about is where it's a proper commercial work, and generally the clients would want to show their building in a specific way. They'll have something in mind. Of course, the lines have
Yeah.
to be straight. The building has to be, I mean, they would want the building to be as a first or the basic picture is to show the building as a whole in its
Yeah.
natural or the overall environment. And then they could be more close-up, say somewhere towards the entrance, or if the building has different patterns around it. Like, sky view is a classic example where you have this interesting facade, and then but on the other side it's a different structure altogether.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
that's the thing. And coming to the first part that you said is, I mean, editing is definitely one bit, but before that, planning and preparing your shoot. I mean, of course, I just go out and click, but I'm also mindful at what point. I mean, if I know I'm going to shoot one, two, or a few buildings in a particular place, say in London or somewhere else, I got to do a prep work to understand where the sunlight is going to come from, and to so that I know I get some patterns, and I plan it out, and I in a way more often than not I visualize already that this is what I'm going to produce as an output finally, even before I click the picture.
Got it.
Yep.
So there's a slight extension to this. With the ability to use your editing tools so much, earlier on, if I had to shoot a building, particularly let's say a hotel, I would pick the right time of the day, which is either early morning or late evening. I would ensure that the lights, all the lights that I need in the building are on, and I would look for the darker sky because we couldn't get those skies in post-processing those days. It was all shot on film. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Today, hasn't it become so much easier that you can do whatever you want with the building now? You don't need to really go early morning and do that thing or late evening.
Partly yes. I mean, I would personally still prefer to use as much natural light as possible. Sky,
Okay,
I understand. Yes, I mean that's something a natural element in the hands of God. You can't just produce clouds or interesting, the blue sky or something out of the blue. But that's something we'll have to do in the software. But coming to light, I would still prefer to use as much sunlight as possible at the right time at the right place,
right,
and
right.
then play around it with it in editing.
Thanks,
And as an
thanks.
example, I'll show you what I did for one of the iconic buildings in high tech city. That was my next part of this session.
Okay,
Right. Okay. Let it go. There it is. I mean, this building needs no introduction. But anyway, just to say this, Cyber Towers. It was the center of attraction when um, decades ago, high tech city. Hyderabad was coming up as an IT hub. Now, if you go, it's such a busy place. There's so many other buildings around it that it's kind of, I would put it, it's kind of lost its sheen. And with the metro also coming, you don't get a neat and clean view. And this was I clicked this as part of the TPS photo walk last month. Again, the sun was behind it. There's, I mean, this if the sun was there, you could have got very interesting shadows. I did get an earlier pic just to showcase. For example, this one. I shot this from somewhere in one of the back lanes, and it's a very tight crop, and that's why it's not very sharp image. But the shadows look really wonderful in here. And I mean, I can't do much about the natural elements. Sometimes they add, sometimes they distract, but yeah, it's a personal view. But anyway, coming back to this one, let's look at this. I'm going to spend some time, start with this as a uh, basic raw image and make it into a fine art. I already have the Lightroom edit. This is just a copy, but let me do it from the beginning. First thing that I would like to do is try to make this building as much straight as possible, and I'll use, of course, the crop and straighten tool. Straighten this one. I also use the upright tool to make the vertical bit. Oh, there you go. I'm definitely going to lose part of the frame, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter. Just let me straighten this a bit more. So the intent is I do some basic black and white edit, um, sort of create and prepare the image to edit it further in Photoshop. If I get it, there you go. There it is. There. So from this, oh, sorry, not that. Okay, I don't think this will do a before a proper one, but yeah. I'll decrease increase the exposure a bit, increase the contrast, of course, bring the highlights down because the sky is quite blown out, but I'll work on it on Photoshop anyway. I'll show you that in a bit. Shadows, I want to bring it down. Whites, I'll increase a bit. Blacks, I'll decrease. Texture, I'll increase. Clarity, also increase a bit. DA is not required so much, and I just feel black and white, and that's my base image. So very similar to what I've done before. There you go. Okay. And I already have that image in the Photoshop. A few things that I'm going to do, I'm going to start working on different aspects of this frame. So if I look at this frame, it's broadly into two parts. One is your sky, which is completely dull, blank, nothing. I want to make it more interesting. And of course, is the main building itself. And the building itself is, I would say, it's you got the grill, this grid, which is very interesting. We'll make that more punchy, including this grill on the top of the building, and basically the facade, which sits behind the grill. So we work on this. I've already done an edit on this previously. One key thing that I have to do is because I have to work on different parts, I have to select which, and I've already done those selections, so I'll just pick them one by one. I'll start with the sky. There you go. So there you go. Those is your sky selected. We have your marching ants showing the parts of the sky. I'll add a solid, wait, let me add a new layer. Yeah, like then I'll add a solid color fill layer and make it bit dark. There we go. Okay, and I'll add another layer, and then we got this filter to render clouds. Where is that? Here you go, and that's clouds. Oops, I should select the sky again. There you go, and render the clouds. Yeah, there it is. Again, it is just like a sort of, it's called clouds, but I look at it as just some white patterns. Again, nothing very interesting, and we have to make it more interesting, so to say. I'll add a layer mask to it. I'll use my brush tool. Let me select it again, and I'll start removing or adding black, whichever you want to look at it, to some parts of the cloud. Right? I'll take this off from here as well, some of it. Ultimately, what I'm trying to reach is to create um, a long exposure effect of, streaking clouds. So because we have the building in sort of the bottom left frame, and I'm trying to make the clouds seem as if they are floating, or the streaks are from left to right of the building, and hence I'm doing this basic prep. I get this out of the edge because once I add the blur, I don't want the clouds to bleed or get onto the main part of the building. There you go. Let me just erase this. This. Here we go. This one. Here you go. This one. Okay, that looks. You must be wondering what's happening, but yeah, here comes the key thing. I'm gonna add blur, motion blur. There you go. So, I mean, I'm just if I increase the blur a bit, it makes the clouds more interesting. There it is. Okay. So from a very dull sky, using the power of Photoshop, we have added streaking clouds, right? That's the first part I wanted to do, make the sky more interesting. Now let's work on this grill. I've done the selection for this one as well. Let me bring that selection up, which is the front grid or grill. There you go. You can see the front grid. I'm going to add a solid color layer again. And this time I'm going to add it, make it white. That's it. Now I'll select the top grid and add another solid color layer and make that more white than the previous one. So the thing is, this is looking, a bit slightly artificial to me. So I'll add, let me select that again. I'll add a curves layer, right? Let me increase that. And I'm gonna add a gradient to it. Let me make this white on black. I'm gonna select the direction of the gradient from here to here. Well, let's do it the other way because there you go. It's very subtle, but you can see. Okay, I just do it here. So I'm just trying to get some shade over here. And so having it as white, uniform, make it slightly grayish or a bit blackish, and give it some sort of a curvy structure over there. So yes, that was the second part. Now let's work on the main facade part of it. So I've done the selection for that as well. I'll load that, which is your building facade. So you got your marching ants again over there. Now I'm going to add a curves layer to this one. I can already see that is selected. So I'll increase the exposure a bit. I'm going to reselect it and add a gradient from left to right. Oops, not like that. I want to make it a bit more darker. So I'm going to add another curves layer. Bring the gradient, the exposure, the gradient down. Reselect it and use the gradient tool again. Now I'll do it from there to one second, so much from here to yeah. I want to get this the name of the building, Cyber Towers. Bit more. There you go. Right. So let me show. Let me group all this. I group this. This is what I started with in Photoshop, and this is what a fine art edit would look like. This is my take. There could be other ways to do it, and this is the edit that there's another edit I had done previously, which is this one. I even cleaned up. I spent a lot of time because I'm doing a live session. I didn't do the cleaning up of the facade because there were some missing tiles or some broken structures and stuff. But yes, as part of this session. So if I go back to Lightroom, if I reset this image, this is what we started from. And this is the fine art edit, this one or this one, whichever look at it. I've done some more. If you can go on my Instagram, which is SG Clicks Architecture, this is my another account. I have my main account for general photography, but I got quite a few fine art edits of various buildings. I keep updating it every once few days or a couple of weeks as the case may be. But yes, yeah, you can see some more if you would like to. And that's it. Fine art architecture, Cyber Towers, Hyderabad. If you have any questions, happy to answer if I can. I'll try my best. So, Saurabh or
Saurabh,
Arvindji, any?
sorry, Suraj. Saurabh, are there any questions that have come in already?
Yes, there's a few questions. I will.
Saurabh,
Hello, sir. Am I not audible? I'm audible, right?
hello.
Am I audible? Hello.
Saurabh, are you on mute maybe?
Oh, sorry. I was on mute on Zoom. My bad. Hi. Yeah, there's quite a few questions already.
Would you like to take
Cool.
the questions now, Suraj? So it'll probably keep it current in context and people will follow a little better probably. So Saurabh, do you think you can
No, that's
ask the
fine.
question?
I would have preferred to pick and choose some, key questions, but sort of how many do we have on the screen?
How many do we have? Sir?
Roughly, is it like a few, many?
There's not a lot. There's like a couple.
It's fine. Just go on. Start with whatever questions you can see, and if you can read it out.
Yeah. One second. I will display the questions on screen too.
So I'll stop sharing then. I can see then.
Yeah. One second. So Sharma sir asked the question. One second. Give me a question. Also, guys, if you have any questions, please drop it in chat. Yep. So Sharma sir asked the question. Sharma VVS. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
what parameters are to be kept in mind for photographing old heritage?
Um, it's a very broad question and a very good one. There are two aspects to it. Of course, uh, in various parts of the world, including India, whether you have the permission to click picture over there, right? As in, does it need a fee or something? That would be the key parameter I'm generally conscious of, and I've seen that in the heritage buildings in India. It's a bit of a hassle. I mean, either straightforward that okay, you pay some amount and you can do photography. They'll give you an authorized slip. Some places um, they don't allow it, or so those kind of hassles. But otherwise, coming to the photography aspects part of it, it's the same. I mean, the key thing is light. Even heritage architecture, it's got structure, it's got some sort of form, shape. It may not have necessary patterns like your modern ones, because they're they were created with a different aesthetic in mind. But you still need to have that light where to you I mean, in general principle is you want to get some sort of a three-dimensional effect out of it. And again, from which angle you shoot, say if the light's falling from say a left side and right side is a bit on a shadow, and then you process it, trying to make it look even more interesting. So yeah, that's a key thing that you would look for.
Yep.
Sort of next.
Yes, we have more questions. So the photocrawler photography asks, how do I identify good patterns or shapes in architecture? Any specific things to look for? Any pointers?
Right. Let me take an example of one of my own picks. Uh, and I'll share my screen again. Take a share. Now, you have to spend time when you're looking at a building. This is what I do. I spend time, kind of do a mental study of what it has to offer. What are the patterns? What are the shapes? Now, if I look at sky view, this one, if I what I realized was because the way the light falls on it and the patterns, they're a bit three-dimensional. And if you walk along the street on the opposite side safely, not on the road, the patterns change shape, where the highlights and the shadows, and I was being very conscious of it. And then I also included these in the frame to kind of stick out as an interesting points of interest. And similarly, even for this building, which this is Chandrasekhar's pick. Okay, even if this one, the interesting patterns. If you walk around a bit now, if I look at this one, what this is my take. The point from where I clicked it, the shadows are interlinking, so it's creating a wavy structure here. So yeah, you need to just keep walking around, take a good look at it before you start taking the picture. Try and create frames in your mind as to what you think you can do and stuff like that. And yeah, that's what I would suggest.
All right. We have
Next.
we have another question from Prashant Manchikanti. He
Hmm.
says, do you pre-visualize your images while shooting?
Yes and no. Some of the images I do, yes. Some then, uh, on the go, I realize that okay, there's something more to it than something different from what I would have visualized. So it's like a spectrum of thoughts that come to my mind. I definitely have like a vision. For example, when I which I showcased, the Cyber Towers one, I had visualized it that it has to be a fine art, very contrasty, black and white, and I click the raw image. I know this is not good. There's lots to do about it, but yeah, that's how I'd visualized. In some cases, I know there will be a lot of patterns, abstract, but I kind of realize that once I'm, at home in my desk where I'm focused, away from distractions, and then I can see more things coming out of a frame. So yeah, it's a bit of both. I know it sounds a bit diplomatic, but I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the answer.
Hey, we have another question from Firdaus Mistri ji. He says,
Hmm.
Suraj just wanted to know that when you shoot the building and in the post processing, how do you decide when to use Lightroom and Photoshop? Does it depend on the type of the building you shoot?
No, good question. See, I personally do most of my edits in Lightroom itself because when it comes to Lightroom, it's mainly playing around with the available light and colors. Photoshop is when there have been some pics where, as I said, when it's a building and you're shooting it from on the ground, the lines start getting distorted quite a bit. And if I feel that they're too distorted and it can't be done in Lightroom, then I go into Photoshop where Photoshop, I can do some specific edits on the specific parts of the frame. And then coming to fine art itself, it works really well in Photoshop. But most of my edits, general edits, it's in Lightroom. It's only in very specific cases that I move to Photoshop.
I think you answered that question very well. It was damn clear. Um,
Saurabh?
I think that's it. We have no other questions. Arvind sir, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if you have anything more to say, then we could probably continue with that and take the question later if you want to.
I guess we just have about 5 minutes in the Zoom meeting. So
Okay.
if any question, fine, or any closing
Questions?
remarks.
Yeah. Any more questions or about that?
No, as of now, no. I think we are done. Guys, if there's any questions, please drop them in chat now.
Yeah. Actually, I'd like to thank Saurabh for doing this so technically and so correctly. It's given a lot of inputs for our edits also, and I'm sure we'll see some really good work coming out of some more society members. But the pictures that I saw were attempts at doing what Suraj does. I'd like to see more of what you would like to do by yourself. Your take on the same situation. Thank you very much. Any more questions coming up there, Saurabh, or do I close this
I
meeting?
just want to add one point to what Arvindji said, and I mean, uh, uh, we see so many photos of Hyderabad. Hyderabad has lots to offer. I mean, culture, people, street, what you have. And I somehow feel that modern architecture is sort of still not being explored properly. I understand there are perhaps legal aspects to it, and it's a challenge, especially in high-tech city area. But yeah, where possible, where you're not breaking the law or trespassing on private property and stuff. There is lots to explore, not just high-tech city area. I'm sure there are places as well, and it will be good that as a society, if we can get more that out into the world, saying that okay, this is people are aware that yeah, we have high tech city, it's an IT hub, but it's got some interesting and some beautiful architecture which we can showcase to the rest of the world. Yes, that's what I would like to say.
Wow, super. Anything else coming up, Saurabh, from there?
No, sir, I think we can close. There's just people saying, everybody saying thanks, and they are congratulating Suraj.
Thank you.
Suraj,
Thanks
I'd
everyone
also.
for joining. I can't see everyone because I'm not on the YouTube live stream. But yeah, thanks, and hope some of you at least will have something to take away from today's session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suraj. Thanks for this wonderful talk. And thank you for spending time with all of us. And I have
It's my
learned quite a
pleasure,
bit.
sir. Pleasure.
And I'm sure everybody else has too. And like I said, you're one of the luminaries of TPS. And we look forward to having more people who do so many brilliant jobs in photography from within TPS to come and talk to all of us, and hopefully more interaction, more interactive sessions with you too, Suraj, in future.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It'll be my pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Saurabh, for hosting this thing, and all the best, everybody. Bye.
Yep, bye.
Bye.